My name is Father Adrian Keller, and for years I believed I was doing God's work. I came to the Vatican after leaving behind another life, one of sand, gunfire, and the echo of orders barked in the chaos of Iraq. I had served as a Marine, thinking I could bring order to a broken world, only to find my soul broken instead. The priesthood was supposed to be a refuge, a place where discipline met faith, where service meant more than violence. I found myself assigned to one of the countless roles that make the Vatican run, a position so humble it barely warranted notice. Every Friday evening, I and a handful of other priests were chosen to assist the cardinals in a private liturgy. We weren't told much. Our duty was simple: carry trays of water, arrange the vessels, keep the candles burning, and stand silent as the men in crimson robes performed their rites. It was an honor, or so I believed. Not every priest received an invitation to serve the College of Cardinals directly. I accepted it without question, proud in some quiet, humble way that God had found me useful again. The chamber itself was not the grand basilicas tourists flocked to. It was a smaller hall, hidden behind locked doors and guarded hallways. To reach it, we passed through corridors painted with saints whose eyes seemed to follow us, through iron gates that clanged shut behind us, until at last we entered the room itself. It looked ordinary enough, an altar of polished stone, candelabras lining the walls, the faint scent of incense that clung to every Vatican chamber. The cardinals would file in, their voices low, their faces solemn. We, the servers, remained near the walls, ready to obey whatever gestures came our way. I never thought to question the purpose of these gatherings. Why would I? In the Vatican, mysteries abound. One learns quickly that faith does not demand explanation for every act. There are rituals older than memory, liturgies reserved for those higher than us. Ours was not to ask, but to serve. When the rites ended, always late into the night, we were given a small chalice of water to bless and restore us. The presiding cardinal would say. We would drink, kneel, receive the sign of the cross, and then retire to our rooms. By morning, it was as if nothing unusual had happened. I remember waking on those Saturdays with a curious lightness, as though sleep had wiped the slate of my mind clean. My dreams were never clear, only smears of sound and color like memories drowned in fog. I thought it was exhaustion. I thought it was grace. There were 8 of us in that service team. We rotated chores, helped each other with the heavy vessels, shared the quiet camaraderie of men who worked unseen. Among them were Father Dominic, older than me, but kind, and Father Marcus Ferretti, who carried himself with a nervous energy that sometimes betrayed doubt. We rarely spoke of the Friday rites. There was an unspoken agreement among us. It was sacred, and silence was part of our vow. Yet, even in silence, I noticed things. The way some cardinals' voices seemed to echo longer than the acoustics of the room should allow. The way the air grew thick during the prayers, heavy enough that my lungs worked harder to draw breath. The way shadows clung to corners where no candlelight reached. But doubt was a seed I refused to water. I told myself it was fatigue or imagination or the sheer awe of standing so close to men of God. The Vatican is a place built on centuries of mystery. I had no desire to peel back its walls and see what lay beneath. Faith, I thought, required trust, and so I trusted. It was on one of those Fridays, near midnight, that I first sensed unease. Father Dominic was absent. No explanation, no announcement. In his place stood another priest I did not know, younger, his eyes downcast, his silence absolute. I glanced toward Marcus, but he kept his gaze fixed forward, lips pressed thin. We served as usual, carried the water, tended the candles, bowed when required. The rite ended, the chalice was offered, and we drank. That night my dreams were darker, Colors smeared into crimson, voices like chanting just beyond the reach of memory. I woke with a pounding heart, but by morning, the images were gone. Still, Dominic's absence lingered in my mind. Priests do not simply vanish in the Vatican without cause. Transfers, illness, even death, there's always word, always a notice, but none came. And in his place, the new man served as though he had always been there. I told myself not to dwell on it. The church is vast, its workings beyond me. Yet something in my bones, a soldier's instinct perhaps, whispered otherwise. In the days that followed, I buried myself in my duties, the routine of Mass, confession, the simple tasks that anchor faith to life. But Friday came again, as it always did, and I found myself once more walking those corridors, hearing the gates clang shut, standing silent as incense filled my lungs. The service went as it always had. And yet when the chalice touched my lips, I felt a shiver that did not fade with sleep. It was the first crack in the wall I had built around my faith. A small thing, a shadow. But in the Vatican, even the smallest shadow hides a story no man should ever uncover. And I, Father Adrian Keller, was about to uncover it. The following Friday came with the same rhythm as all the others, bells tolling in the square, pilgrims pressing through the streets, the Vatican alive with devotion. But for me, it carried a weight I couldn't name. The unease from the previous week lingered like smoke I couldn't wave away. When our small team gathered outside the chamber, I counted us by instinct. 1, 2, 3, 7, not 8. Father Dominic was absent again. At first, I thought nothing of it. Priests fell ill, were reassigned, moved to different duties. But as the minutes stretched, my unease grew. Dominic had been steady, dependable, a quiet presence among us. His absence 2 weeks in a row wasn't coincidence. The new priest, the one who had replaced him last week, stood in line, his head bowed, hands folded neatly. He didn't speak. None of us did. In this place, silence was demanded. But when I glanced sideways, Father Marcus's jaw was tight, his knuckles white around the silver tray he carried. He noticed too. We entered the chamber. The cardinals filed in, crimson robes sweeping across the stone floor. The air thickened with incense, the candelabras flickered, and shadows seemed to breathe against the walls. The rite began. I tried to focus on the rhythm of my tasks, water poured, candles trimmed, vessels lifted, but my eyes kept drifting to the empty space where Dominic should have been. I remembered his hands, rough from years of service, steady even when the weight of a golden vessel bent his arms. I remembered the way he'd hum softly under his breath when no one was listening. Now there was only silence. When the rite ended, we were offered the chalice once more. The cardinal presiding spoke the words of blessing, his voice deep, resonant, echoing too long. I drank as always. The water was cool, metallic. A strange heaviness settled in my head. Later that night, I woke in my cell drenched in sweat. My dreams had been red again, shapes moving in circles, voices murmuring in a language older than Latin. I rubbed my temples, but the images faded before I could grasp them. The next morning, while walking through one of the administrative corridors, I passed a table stacked with internal bulletins, small notices meant only for clergy. One sheet lay slightly askew, stamped with the Vatican seal. My eyes caught a familiar name. Father Dominic Forelli, deceased. Cause, sudden illness. Funeral rites performed privately. I stopped cold. The bulletin was dated 3 days prior. No details, no ceremony, no mourning. Just a line on a sheet of paper. Tucked between notices about library renovations and choir schedules, a chill crawled down my spine. Dominic hadn't been old. He hadn't been sick. Only last month he'd carried crates of wine with me, joking about our aching backs. And now, gone, buried, without so much as a whispered prayer in the basilica. I folded the notice into my pocket before anyone could see me staring. That afternoon, I sought out Marcus. He was in the courtyard, trimming a hedge with mechanical precision. I approached slowly. "You saw the bulletin?" I asked. His shears paused, then resumed. "Yes." No funeral, no explanation. His jaw tightened. "Sometimes, things happen quickly here. We are not always told why." "Marcus," I pressed, lowering my voice, "doesn't this strike you as strange?" He finally set the shears down, meeting my gaze. His eyes were weary, shadowed. "Strange? Everything here is strange, but questioning it?" He shook his head. "That path leads nowhere good." Before I could answer, footsteps echoed through the courtyard. A cardinal passed by, his crimson robe dragging across the stones. Marcus bowed immediately. I followed suit. When we straightened, the cardinal's eyes lingered on us for a moment too long, as though measuring our silence. Then he moved on. Marcus picked up the shears again. "Leave it alone, Keller," he murmured, "for your own sake." But I couldn't. That night, I lay awake listening to the bells toll vespers. The image of Dominic's name on that bulletin seared itself into my thoughts. A priest does not vanish into a line of ink. A priest deserves prayer, remembrance, a liturgy for the living and the dead. Instead, Dominic had been erased, and the more I tried to push the thought aside, the stronger it returned, whispering that there was a reason for his disappearance, a reason they didn't want us to know. Faith had taught me trust, the Marines had taught me suspicion. Now both warred inside me, leaving me restless, uncertain. But in my gut, in that old soldier's instinct that had kept me alive through gunfire and desert storms, I felt it. Something was deeply wrong in the heart of the church, and Dominic's disappearance was only the beginning. The Vatican streets are never truly silent. Even at night, pilgrims wander with candles, guards patrol, and the bells mark each passing hour with authority that brooks no sleep. I had grown used to the rhythm, so much so that when I finally left the city walls one evening for a drive into the countryside, the quiet struck me like a blow. The road stretched ahead, lined with skeletal olive trees. My hands rested steady on the wheel, though my thoughts churned. Dominic's death notice burned in my pocket like a brand. Marcus's warning still echoed in my head, "Leave it alone." But Marines don't leave questions alone, not when they smell of lies. The headlights swept across a curve when the world changed. A figure burst from the brush, arms flailing, eyes wide. I slammed the brakes. Tires screamed, the car shuddered, and the man collapsed onto the asphalt. My heart hammered as I jumped out. The beam of my headlights caught his face. Marcus. His cassock was torn, his skin pale with terror. He staggered to his knees, gasping like a man who had been running for miles. For one heartbeat, relief filled me. Then dread followed, because 3 more figures emerged from the darkness. They wore black from head to toe, not the robes of clergy, but the precise utilitarian garb of professionals. Their faces were hidden by masks. In their hands gleamed blades, short, curved, efficient, assassins. Marcus stumbled toward me. "Adrian, please!" His voice broke into a rasp. Then he collapsed against the hood of my car. The 3 figures advanced, silent as shadows. Instinct returned. The same that had carried me through firefights in Fallujah now whispered in my ear. "Don't freeze, don't panic, control the field." I slid around the car, opening the driver's side door just enough to make it look like I might flee. The assassins' heads turned, their formation tightening. I yanked the heavy flashlight from the glove compartment, palming it like a baton. "Back away," I barked in Italian. My voice carried command. Years of training lent it steel. They paused, just long enough for me to act. I hurled the flashlight into the brush. It crashed through leaves with a clatter, drawing their eyes. In that instant, I seized Marcus by the collar, hauling him into the passenger seat. His body was dead weight, but adrenaline lent me strength. I dove behind the wheel, slammed the door, and floored the accelerator. Gravel spit as the car lurched forward. In the rearview mirror, I saw the assassins give chase, but their legs were no match for the engine. Within seconds, darkness swallowed them. Only then did I let myself breathe. Marcus slumped against the seat, trembling. Blood stained his sleeve. I reached into the back, grabbing a small first aid kit I always carried, a Marine's habit that had never left me. "Stay with me," I said, tearing gauze. His eyes fluttered open, glassy with fear. They know." "Who?" He swallowed hard. "The ones behind the rights. They knew I didn't drink." My hands froze. "Didn't drink?" "The water," he whispered. "Every Friday. It isn't blessing, it's poison for memory. I pretended for weeks, spilled it when no one looked. But they saw. They always see." His breath hitched. "Dominic, he tried too. They killed him." The words struck like bullets. My chest tightened. "They'll come for you too," Marcus rasped. "Anyone who remembers." I steadied his head against the seat, pressing gauze to his wound. "Not tonight. Not while I'm here." For a long moment, only the sound of the engine filled the silence. The Vatican lay far behind us now, the road unspooling into open fields. I didn't know where I was driving, only that I had to keep moving, keep Marcus alive, keep us both out of reach. But his words had lodged deep. The rites weren't rites at all. The chalice was no sacrament. The water we drank was designed to wipe us clean, turn us into willing pawns. Dominic had refused and been erased. Marcus had refused and was hunted. And me? I had swallowed every drop. The thought made me grip the wheel until my knuckles whitened. Beside me, Marcus groaned, his voice a ragged whisper. "Adrian, you have to see. They're not serving God. They're serving something else, something old, something buried in those stones." His eyes rolled back, and he fell limp against the seat. I pressed harder on the accelerator, my jaw set. The Marine in me knew this wasn't over. This was an ambush I had barely escaped, and the enemy would regroup. The priest in me prayed silently, though the words felt hollow, because faith had always been my refuge. But if Marcus was right, then the very church I served was harboring a darkness older than Rome itself, and I, Father Adrian Keller, was caught between the two. I drove until the fuel gauge blinked red, the countryside stretching endless beneath the moonlight. At last, I found a crumbling farmhouse half hidden behind cypress trees. Its windows were shattered, roof sagging, long abandoned. Good enough. I carried Marcus inside, laying him on a dust-covered cot. His breathing was shallow, but steady. The wound in his arm wasn't deep, flesh only, thank God, but the blood loss had left him weak. I cleaned it as best I could, bandaged it with strips from my undershirt, and waited. Hours passed. The night outside pressed heavy, filled with distant howls of stray dogs. I sat on a broken chair, the silence gnawing at me, Dominic's name echoing in my mind. Then Marcus stirred. His eyes flickered open, darting around until they found me. For a moment, panic flashed. Then recognition settled, and he sagged against the cot. "You saved me," he whispered. I nodded. For now, those men, who were they? His laugh was brittle. "You already know. You just don't want to admit it. Try me." Marcus closed his eyes, gathering strength. "The rites, every Friday. We thought we were serving God, didn't we? Thought the cardinals needed us for some sacred duty." "Yes," I said, my chest tight. "It wasn't liturgy." His voice was hoarse but sharp. "It was summoning." The word landed like a stone in my gut. "They have it," Marcus continued. "A relic, not holy, not blessed, a claw, fossilized, black as obsidian, the claw of something that walked this world before Eden. They keep it hidden in the chamber, beneath the altar. Every Friday they feed it, prayers twisted into incantations, incense laced with blood, chants disguised as liturgy. He shuddered. And us, Adrian. We were part of it, vessels to serve the ceremony. I shook my head. That's impossible. The church would never. He cut me off with a glare. Dominic thought the same until he saw it. Until he realized the water wasn't blessing. It's a drug, a chemical, designed to strip memory, to make us forget what our eyes saw, what our ears heard. My stomach turned. The chalice, the cool metallic taste, the blank spaces in my mind each Saturday morning. Marcus's voice dropped to a rasp. Dominic refused to drink. They noticed. He didn't live another week. I swallowed hard. And you? I pretended. Held the cup, let it touch my lips, but never swallowed. Poured it away when no one watched. I thought I could escape, keep my mind clear. But they caught the pattern. They always catch it. His hand trembled. That's why they sent the black robes tonight. I leaned forward, gripping the edge of the cot. Why, Marcus? Why go through all this? What do they gain from serving something demonic? His eyes burned in the dim light. Power. Always power. The claw is a conduit. Each Friday's rite isn't just ritual, it's fuel. They're feeding it, charging it, preparing it, and when the 40th day arrives, he broke off, coughing. I poured water from a flask into his mouth. He drank shakily, then continued. On the 40th day, the seal breaks. The claw's essence pours out, not into the world, not directly, into a vessel. A man they've chosen. Who? Marcus's face twisted. Minister Volkov. You've seen him. Smiles for cameras, handshakes with bishops, but behind the doors, he's theirs. He wants what no mortal should want, the strength of a demon inside human flesh. He'll rule with it. Governments will bow, nations will crumble, and the cardinals who serve him will stand at his right hand. The room felt colder with each word. I remembered the thick air during the rites, the shadows clinging to corners. Had I stood feet away from that claw and never seen it? Marcus grabbed my sleeve, his eyes fierce. Don't you see? We weren't serving God. We were covering for them. We carried water, we trimmed candles, we played our parts while they bent scripture into chains. Every time we walked into that chamber, we helped bind the world tighter to hell. My throat was dry. I wanted to deny it, to cling to faith, to tell him he was delirious. But the truth was already clawing at me, deeper than denial could reach. 40 days, I murmured. When? His grip tightened. This Friday, 4 nights from now, the final rite. 4 days. I sat back, my mind a storm. Part of me wanted to walk away, to find a quiet parish in some forgotten corner of the world, to drown in prayer and pretend none of this was real. But another part, the Marine still buried under the cassock, knew you can't run from an enemy once you've seen its face. Marcus let go, sinking back into the cot. His eyes fluttered shut. You have to choose, Adrian. Either close your eyes like they want, or fight. But know this, fighting means war, and war means blood. I sat there in the ruined farmhouse, the night pressing close. And for the first time since I'd come to Rome, my faith felt less like a sanctuary and more like a battlefield. I didn't sleep that night in the farmhouse. The wind creaked through broken shutters, carrying with it the faint toll of distant bells. Marcus lay restless on the cot, his bandaged arm twitching as though the wound itself carried memories. I sat in the dark, watching the weak glow of my phone clock, 2:37, 3:12, 4:01. Every minute was a step closer to Friday, the 40th day. It kept circling in my thoughts like a vulture. I'd heard the number in sermons countless times, 40 days of flood, 40 years of wandering, 40 days of fasting in the desert, always a period of testing, of trial. Now it was corruption of that symbol, turned inside out. The Cardinals weren't marking a holy season. They were counting down to apocalypse. By dawn, Marcus stirred. His eyes were sunken, but clearer. "We don't have long," he said simply. "No," I admitted. 4 days. He pushed himself upright, grimacing. "That's all the time we need, if we act." "And if we don't?" He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw the reflection of every nightmare he'd endured. "Then Volkov becomes more than a man. He becomes a throne for hell." We ate stale bread I'd found in the pantry, washed down with bitter water. The routine felt almost sacramental, 2 priests sharing a meal before war. Marcus spread scraps of paper across the dusty table, sketching the chamber from memory. The claw rests beneath the altar, encased in glass. Every Friday they remove it, place it on the stone, and begin the chant. We serve the water, the candles, distractions. By the time the rite ends, the claw pulses with energy. "And on the 40th day," I said slowly, "that energy transfers." He nodded. "Into Volkov. They've prepared him for weeks. You've seen him. Always present, always smiling. His body's changing already. The essence is seeping in." I thought of Volkov's handshakes, the cold precision in his eyes. I'd dismissed it as politics. Now I wasn't sure if I'd ever looked at him as a man. "What's the plan?" I asked. Marcus exhaled. "We stop the rite, destroy the claw if we can, or at least sever the ceremony before it completes." "And how exactly do 2 priests stop half the College of Cardinals and their assassins?" He gave a weary smile. "You forget, Adrian. You weren't always a priest, and neither was I." That was when he told me. Before the cassock, Marcus had been carabinieri, Italian police. Years of training, old contacts, scars hidden under his sleeves. He hadn't left that world entirely. There were still people who would answer his call if he dared to make it. "You trust them?" I asked. "As much as I trust anyone in this city." His eyes hardened. "But we can't rely only on them. We need to prepare ourselves." The Marine in me stirred uneasily. Memories of patrols, ambushes, blood-soaked sand. I had buried that life under vows of obedience, poverty, chastity. Yet here I was, drawing maps for an assault on the Vatican itself. My chest tightened. "Marcus, if we fight them, if we use violence, what does that make us?" He met my gaze without flinching. "It makes us men standing against hell." I rose, pacing the room. My fingers traced the small crucifix hanging at my neck. "I came here to escape war. To serve God, not carry a rifle again." Marcus's voice was soft but sharp. "Do you think God doesn't see what they're doing? Do you think he asks us to stay silent while they open the gates of hell in his house?" I had no answer, only silence. The sun rose higher, light piercing the cracks in the shutters. Dust danced like ash. Finally I spoke. "If we do this, we do it together. No half measures." He nodded. "Together." The next hours blurred with planning. Marcus listed what we'd need: explosives to breach the chamber, weapons to even the odds, allies to call the police when the moment came. I listened, contributed where I could. My soldier's instincts slotting back into place like gears long dormant. But beneath every word ran a current of dread. Because for all our plans, I knew the truth. 2 men against a legion of cardinals, guards, and assassins wasn't war. It was suicide. That night, I walked outside the farmhouse. The air smelled of earth and pine, sharp and grounding. I stared up at the stars, searching for constellations I'd memorized as a boy. My lips formed prayers, but the words faltered. For the first time in years, I wasn't sure who I was praying to, or if he was listening. All I knew was this: Friday would come. The 40th day would dawn. And when the sun set, the world might not belong to men anymore. Marcus's voice broke the silence behind me. "You're still a soldier, Adrian. but now you fight for more than a flag." I turned, meeting his weary smile, and I realized he was right. I was Father Adrian Keller, priest, ex-Marine, servant of God, and in 4 days I would be at war again. The next 2 nights were a blur of whispered planning and restless pacing. Marcus had managed to patch himself up enough to move, though every step was still stiff with pain. We couldn't afford rest. Friday loomed like a thundercloud, and we needed answers: where, when, how. That meant one thing. We had to return to the lion's den. The Vatican is a fortress of faith, but also of stone and secrets. Marcus knew its veins better than most. Years of service, years of quietly observing doors that should have been locked but weren't. Guards who watched too carefully or not enough. He led me through back passages tourists never saw, narrow staircases, servant tunnels, libraries long since closed to the public. We moved like ghosts, cassocks blending into the shadows. My heart pounded with each step, but my body remembered how to stay silent, how to breathe shallow, how to keep a hand near the blade hidden under cloth. It was near midnight when we found what we were looking for. Marcus held up a hand, motioning me to crouch beside him. We were pressed against the carved stone of a cloister wall, looking through a crack in the heavy oak doors of an antechamber. Beyond lay a room lit by a circle of tall candles, and there they were. Cardinal Severano stood at the altar, crimson robes pooling around him like spilled blood. He was tall, gaunt, his face carved with lines that looked more like cracks than wrinkles. His hands were raised, not in prayer but in command. Before him, on the stone slab, lay the relic. I'd seen countless reliquaries, bones of saints, fragments of the cross, sacred vessels venerated for centuries. But this was different. The object resting on the altar was black, jagged, and wrong. A claw, fossilized but unmistakably predatory. Its curved talon gleamed like obsidian, edges sharp even after untold millennia. Just looking at it made the air seem thicker, as if the stone itself recoiled from its presence. Severano's voice carried through the chamber, low and rhythmic, speaking Latin, but twisted, bent. I caught fragments: potestas, infernum, pactum, power, hell, pact, and then I saw the other man, Volkov. The government minister stood at the edge of the circle, stripped of his suit jacket, his shirt rolled to the elbows. His skin was slick with sweat, but worse were the marks. Dark veins crawled up his forearms like cracks in marble. His eyes gleamed faintly, not with reflection, but with something crystalline beneath the surface. He looked less like a man, and more like a vessel already half filled. My stomach lurched. Severano lowered his hands, turning toward Volkov. His voice grew louder, and though the words were Latin, the intent was unmistakable. A vow. The ritual wasn't complete yet, but the claw was already feeding him, dripping essence into his blood. Volkov raised his own hands, trembling but eager, like a penitent begging for communion. Marcus shifted beside me, his face hard. "They've started the final preparation," he whispered. "By Friday, he won't just be human anymore." I swallowed bile. "Then we end it before Friday." "Careful," Marcus hissed. "One wrong move now and we don't live to see Friday." Through the crack, I saw movement in the shadows. Black-robed figures, those same assassins, stood at the edges of the room, their hands on hilts, eyes alert. They weren't guards. They were executioners waiting for an excuse. We pulled back slowly, hearts pounding, careful not to let the hinges creak. Once we were far enough down the hall, I exhaled, pressing my back against the wall. "Now we know," Marcus said. "Severano leads them. The claw is real. Volkov is the vessel." I nodded, though my throat was dry. Seeing it had changed something in me. Doubt had been replaced with terror, and terror with resolve. Marcus caught my eye. We can't just fight them head on, not yet. We need a strike plan. Breach, distraction, demolition, and... His voice dropped. A way to use the claw against itself. The words chilled me. You said it yourself, he continued. Only the relic has the power to kill what it creates. If Volkov completes the ritual, nothing else will touch him. I clenched my fists. Then we make sure it never completes. Marcus shook his head. Adrian, if it comes to it, we may have no choice. Quell the demon with the demon's own talon. You'll have to be the one to wield it. I stared at him, my chest tight. The thought felt like blasphemy, like spitting on the vows I had made. To raise a relic of hell as a weapon, it wasn't just dangerous, it was damnation. But as I remembered Volkov's gleaming eyes, the cracks spreading across his skin, I realized something far worse. Damnation had already entered the church. If I didn't act, it would soon enter the world. I looked Marcus in the eye. Then God forgive me, because I'll do what I must. He nodded grimly. Then we have 3 nights left to prepare. The bells tolled midnight, their echoes carrying through stone like the voice of judgment itself. And in the shadows of the red robes, I knew we had seen the face of the enemy. The farmhouse had become our war room. By the second night, its broken walls were covered with papers, sketches, scraps of maps. Marcus's handwriting scrawled across everything. Latin fragments, security notes, even crude drawings of the chamber and its guards. It looked more like a battlefield briefing than the cell of 2 priests. He pointed to the altar he'd drawn in thick black ink. The claw rests here. They remove it for the ritual. That's our chance. I shook my head. Our chance to do what? Snatch it out from under a cardinal surrounded by assassins? Marcus gave a humorless smile. That's exactly what I mean. I rubbed my temples. You're suggesting we use it, the claw itself. His eyes darkened. You saw Volkov. He's already changing. By Friday, he'll be something no bullet, no blade, no prayer can stop. The claw created him. It's the only thing that can unmake him. The words turned my stomach. I looked at the crucifix on the table, its bronze body glinting in candlelight. You're asking me to commit blasphemy, to wield a relic of hell against God's enemies. Marcus leaned closer, voice low but fierce. I'm asking you to save lives, maybe the world, don't you see? They've twisted everything. Scripture, sacrament, even us, they're already in league with blasphemy. The only question left is whether we let it consume everything. Silence pressed heavy between us. I thought of my vows, of the altar, of the blood-soaked sand in Iraq. I had sworn never to kill again. And yet here I was, drawing breath for a war against demons wearing the robes of Christ. Finally I said, if I take it, if I hold that claw, what does it make me? Marcus's gaze didn't waver. It makes you the man standing between them and us. Sometimes that's enough. I exhaled slowly, nodding. Then God forgive me. We began planning in earnest. Marcus listed supplies, explosives for the chamber door, iron blades to stall the assassins, salt to break their circles. He showed me the contacts on his phone, old Carabinieri comrades, one in particular who had risen through the police ranks. If I send him the signal, he'll come, Marcus said, but we have to hold out until then. And if he doesn't, then we die buying time. The Marine in me appreciated the honesty. We trained in the empty yard behind the farmhouse. Marcus moved stiffly with his bandaged arm, but his precision was sharp. He handed me an old combat knife, the handle wrapped in worn leather. Not holy, he said, but iron. Demons hate iron. I tested its weight, muscle memory flooding back. Each thrust and parry brought echoes of desert nights, of firelight on sand. I had buried those skills under vestments and vows. Now they rose like ghosts. When the sun set, we sat by the dying fire, exhaustion settling heavy. Marcus poured a small measure of sacramental wine into tin cups. He raised his toward me. To Dominic, to all of us who served thinking it was holy, I lifted mine slowly. And to Friday. One way or another, it ends. We drank in silence. Later, as Marcus slept, I stayed awake. My hands traced the beads of my rosary, lips forming prayers that faltered. The words felt brittle, as though God himself had turned his face away. My eyes drifted to the sketches of the claw. Its jagged shape burned in my mind. I remembered the way the air thickened in its presence, the way Volkov's body cracked like marble under its influence. If Marcus was right, if only the claw could kill what it birthed, then the burden would fall on me. A relic of hell wielded by a priest of God. The paradox gnawed at me. Was it salvation or damnation? Could both be true? At dawn, Marcus woke. He found me still staring at the papers, hollow-eyed. "You're thinking too much," he said. "I'm wondering what God will see if I pick it up." Marcus put a hand on my shoulder, steady and firm. "God will see a man who tried." That evening, he showed me the signal device, a small transmitter disguised as a pocket watch. "One press," he explained, "and my contact knows it's real. He'll bring a team. But don't count on them arriving before the fire starts." I nodded. Understood. We both knew what that meant. We'd be alone in the first wave. As night fell, I stepped outside. The cypress trees swayed like dark sentinels, their branches whispering in the wind. I lifted my eyes to the stars. "Lord," I whispered, "if you see me, guide my hand. And if I must take up the claw, let it be only to end what should never have begun." The silence that answered was heavy, but in it I found resolve. Friday was coming, the 40th day, and I, Father Adrian Keller, would soon make a pact of blood. Friday came draped in ordinary silence, the kind that makes men forget doom is near. Pilgrims filled St. Peter's Square, candles flickering, hymns rising into the dusk. To them, it was just another night of devotion. To me, it was the end of the 40th day. I walked through the corridors of the Vatican with steady steps, cassock flowing around me like any other priest's. Inside, my pulse hammered, but I forced my face into calm. I was Father Adrian Keller, obedient, unquestioning, chosen to serve. I could not afford suspicion. Our service team gathered at the chamber doors, 7 of us now. The new man filled Marcus's place, head bowed, eyes hollow. My stomach turned at the thought of what fate awaited him. Dominic, Marcus, now him. The gates clanged shut behind us. Incense filled the air, thick and acrid. Shadows swam across the walls. At the altar stood Cardinal Severano, crimson robes pooling like blood. Before him gleamed the claw, black and jagged, exhaling a hunger that bent the air itself. And beside the altar, Volkov waited. His veins were darker now, spreading across his skin like cracks in stone. His eyes glowed faintly, crystalline, no longer human. He was ready. The rite began. Chants rolled across the chamber, Latin twisted into something older, fouler. We moved as always. Trays carried, candles trimmed, water offered. I forced my body into obedience, every gesture practiced. To the cardinals, I was just another silent servant. But under my robe, my thumb pressed the hidden transmitter Marcus had given me. A single press, a signal sent. Somewhere outside these walls, his contact would move. Reinforcements were on their way. I stole a glance toward the great oak doors. Beyond them, Marcus waited in the shadows, explosives strapped to the hinges, rifle in hand. He would strike when the signal came. Severano's voice rose, sharp as a blade. The cardinals answered in unison, a chorus that made my teeth ache. The claw pulsed with light, red, black, shifting like molten obsidian. Volkov stepped closer, his hands trembling with eagerness. The air grew heavier. My lungs fought for breath. Sweat slicked my back. I reached for the crucifix at my chest, whispering a prayer only God could hear. Forgive me for what I will do. Then I pressed the trigger in my pocket. The world split apart. A roar thundered as the oak doors exploded inward. Fire, dust, and splinters filled the air. The cardinals staggered, their chants breaking. I threw myself to the ground as shock waves rattled the stone walls. Through the smoke came Marcus, rifle blazing. Bullets cracked, echoing like thunder. Black-robed assassins erupted from the shadows, steel flashing. Marcus dropped 2 in seconds, but more surged forward. I rolled behind a column, pulling the iron knife Marcus had given me. My cassock tore as I lunged at the first assassin who closed the distance. The blade bit deep, the man collapsing with a hiss of blood. My body moved like it had in Iraq. Training awakened, vows forgotten. Chaos filled the chamber. Cardinals screamed, some scrambling for cover, others continuing the chant, desperate to keep the ritual alive. Severano's voice bellowed above the noise, trying to restore order. Volkov roared, his body convulsing, the transformation surging faster. Marcus fought like a man possessed, cutting down attackers, reloading in fluid motion, but there were too many. They poured from hidden alcoves, blades glinting, eyes blank with fanaticism. I slashed, parried, drove my knife into flesh again and again. Pain burned across my shoulder where a blade had grazed me. Blood ran warm down my arm. Still, I fought. In the center, the claw pulsed brighter, as though feeding on the chaos, on the blood spilled in its presence. Severano spread his arms, chanting louder, veins bulging in his neck. Marcus shouted across the din, "Adrian, the altar! Stop the rite!" I staggered toward it, cutting down another assassin. The altar loomed before me, the claw gleaming with terrible hunger. I reached out, but Volkov moved. With a single motion, he swatted aside 2 priests like they were dolls, sending them crashing into the wall. His body was taller now, broader, veins crawling up his neck, jaw unhinged in a snarl. His hand shot out, grabbing me by the throat. The world narrowed to his grip, crushing, suffocating. His eyes burned with inhuman light. "You are too late," he hissed, his voice layered. "Human and monstrous, 40 days, the covenant is sealed." I clawed at his arm, gasping, my vision dimming. Around me, the battle raged, Marcus firing, assassins screaming, cardinals chanting, and at the heart of it all, the claw pulsed like a living heart, beating faster, hungrier. Friday had come. The betrayal was complete. Volkov's grip crushed my throat, lifting me off the ground as though I weighed nothing. His skin had darkened, veins black and pulsing like rivers of tar. His eyes glowed crystalline red, fractured like stained glass lit from within. When he spoke, his voice carried 2 tones, one human, one roaring from somewhere older than the world. "The pact is fulfilled," he thundered. 40 days, 40 nights. Now the world kneels. He hurled me across the chamber. My back slammed into a column, breath torn from my lungs. I collapsed to the ground, gasping, vision swimming. Marcus's rifle cracked again and again, the muzzle flash lighting the smoke. Bullets ripped into Volkov's chest, but he barely staggered. He looked down at the wounds, snarled, and the holes closed in seconds, flesh knitting with a hiss. "God help us," Marcus muttered, slamming a fresh magazine into the rifle. The assassins pressed harder, emboldened by their master's transformation. I shoved myself to my feet, knife slick with blood. Marcus fired into their ranks, cutting them down, but he couldn't cover them all. One slipped past his aim and lunged at him with a curved blade. Marcus turned too late. The steel carved across his side. He cried out, dropping to one knee. Blood soaked his cassock, dark and fast. "Marcus!" I roared, lunging forward. My knife met the assassin's throat, ending him, but too late to stop the wound. Marcus slumped against the wall, rifle slipping from his grip. "Finish it," he rasped, clutching his side. "Don't let that thing—" His words dissolved into a cough of blood. Volkov roared, raising both arms. The floor shuddered as though struck by an earthquake. Candles toppled, stone cracked, and shards rained from the vaulted ceiling. Priests screamed, but Severano only spread his arms wider, exultant, chanting faster. The beast had been born. I charged. Every instinct screamed suicide, but I had no choice. Volkov swung a massive arm. I ducked beneath it, slashing at his ribs with the iron blade. Sparks flew, but the knife snapped in half, useless. He backhanded me across the chamber. I crashed against the altar, the claw looming inches from my face, pulsing like a beating heart. Volkov stalked toward me, each step shaking the stones. "You served me well, Keller," he growled. "All of you, vessels, puppets, sheep fattened for slaughter." I scrambled back, searching for anything, a weapon, a miracle. My hand brushed the broken pieces of the knife, jagged but worthless. Then Marcus's voice rang out, hoarse but defiant. "Adrian, don't listen! Fight!" Volkov turned toward him with a snarl. In that instant, Marcus, bleeding and broken, raised his rifle one last time. He fired not at Volkov, but at the candelabras above. The chain snapped. A dozen iron stands toppled, crashing onto Volkov's back. The beast roared, staggering, pinned for a heartbeat beneath the wreckage. "Now!" Marcus shouted. I lunged, seizing the claw from the altar. The moment my fingers touched it, fire and ice seared through me. Images tore into my skull, screaming faces, cities burning, armies kneeling before shadows. The claw throbbed in my grip like it was alive, eager. Volkov ripped free of the fallen iron, turning toward me. His smile stretched too wide, teeth jagged. "You would wield it? You would damn yourself to kill me?" I staggered under the weight of its power. My arms trembled. "Better damned than enslaved." He lunged. I thrust. The claw's tip pierced his chest, sinking into flesh that smoked and cracked. His scream shook the chamber, a sound too vast for human throats. His body convulsed, light bursting from the fractures in his skin. But it wasn't enough. He seized my wrist, crushing bone, forcing the claw back inch by inch. His face twisted in triumph. "You cannot kill what is eternal." Then Marcus, bleeding out, pushed himself from the floor. He snatched a fallen blade and drove it into Volkov's leg. It barely slowed the monster, but it was enough. I summoned everything left in me, every ounce of rage, faith, and despair. With both hands I rammed the claw deeper, straight into Volkov's heart. Light erupted, white, red, black, all colors at once. The chamber shook as though the earth itself rejected him. Volkov's scream became a roar, then a wail, then silence. His body disintegrated into ash, scattering across the stones. The claw shattered in my grip, crumbling into dust. I fell to my knees, coughing, chest burning as though I'd swallowed fire. Around us, assassins froze, terror in their eyes. Severano's chant faltered for the first time. The cardinals looked on in horror as their vessel crumbled to nothing. Marcus collapsed beside me, blood pouring from his side. His eyes met mine, weak but fierce. "You did it," he whispered. "You stopped him." I gripped his hand, my own shaking. "Not without you." The chamber was chaos, priests screaming, assassins regrouping, Severano rallying his followers. But for a moment, just a moment, the beast was gone, and all that remained was silence and ash. The chamber reeked of ash and blood. Volkov was gone, his body scattered across the stones like burnt parchment, but his absence didn't bring relief. It brought fury. Cardinal Severano's voice cracked through the chaos, rallying the remaining priests. "The vessel is broken, but the covenant remains. Kill them both. Spill their blood upon the altar." The assassins obeyed instantly, black robes flaring as they charged. My body screamed with exhaustion, my throat raw from Volkov's grip, but I raised what was left of my iron blade. Beside me, Marcus slumped against the wall, his cassock soaked crimson. His eyes were glassy, but his voice was steady. "Go on," he whispered. "I'll hold them." "No." I tightened my grip on his hand. "We finish this together." The first assassin lunged. I met him with a desperate slash, the blade tearing across his chest. Another came from behind. I spun, caught his wrist, and drove the jagged fragment of iron into his throat. But there were too many. Their shadows pressed in, a tide of steel and fanatic devotion. Then came the thunder. A blast rattled the chamber, deafening and blinding. Grenades, flash and concussion, rolled across the floor, erupting in bursts of white light. The assassins staggered, covering their eyes, dropping blades. Smoke filled the air. Through the haze stormed figures in dark uniforms, helmets, rifles, visors reflecting the candlelight. Italian special forces. Marcus's signal had reached them. "Polizia, down, down!" their leader roared. Automatic fire ripped across the chamber, controlled bursts that cut through the black-robed killers. Screams echoed, steel clattered to the floor. The tide turned in seconds. Severano snarled, clutching the altar. His crimson robe flared as he drew a dagger etched with runes. His voice rose above the gunfire, spitting curses older than Rome. "You cannot stop the covenant. We are eternal. We are—" His words ended in a sharp crack. A single bullet punched through his chest, hurling him backward across the altar. He hit the stones with a sound like breaking glass, the dagger skittering from his hand. Silence fell, broken only by the moans of the wounded. The soldiers swept the chamber, binding the surviving priests, disarming the last assassins. The great oak doors hung shattered, smoke drifting upward toward the vaulted ceiling. I knelt beside Marcus. His breathing was ragged, shallow. I pressed my hands to his wound, blood slicking my fingers. "Stay with me, Marcus. It's over. You made it." His eyes found mine. A faint smile tugged at his lips. Dominic would have been proud. I swallowed hard. So am I. He closed his eyes, whether in rest or surrender, I couldn't tell. Medics rushed forward, pulling me back as they began their work. I stumbled away, my body suddenly weightless, as though I'd left it behind. The altar loomed before me, empty now. The claw was gone, reduced to dust still clinging to my palms. I stared at the black residue, trembling. The relic of hell had broken, but its stain lingered on my skin. A voice at my side, one of the officers. "Padre Keller, you're safe now. We'll handle it." Safe. The word rang hollow. Because I knew the truth. Volkov was ash. Severano dead, but the covenant wasn't destroyed. It was deeper than one cardinal, one minister, one relic. 40 days had built something older, darker, something that might rise again when no one was watching. As they led me from the chamber, I looked back one last time. The altar was cracked, the candles guttered, the red robes scattered like slaughtered cattle. But in the shadows, I swore I still saw movement, the suggestion of hands reaching, of whispers clinging to the stone. The claw was gone, but its echo remained. Outside, dawn bled across Rome. Sirens wailed, police lights painted the marble facades in blue and red. Pilgrims still filled the square, oblivious to the war that had just been fought beneath their feet. They prayed, they sang, they lifted their eyes to heaven. I wanted to join them, to close my eyes, fold my hands, and pretend faith was enough. But my hands still carried the dust of hell. And I knew better. The church would cover this up. They always did. The world would move on, never knowing how close it had come. And me? I would carry the weight. I was Father Adrian Keller, priest, soldier, survivor, and though the claw was shattered, its curse still lingered, because evil does not die in one night, it waits. And so do I.